Hey everyone, it's Jeremy with Teletone. I am excited because we have a brand new instrument out. This has been an idea that I've had for a while. Wasn't totally sure how to pull it off until more recently when we decided to really dive in and tackle this. We are calling it Anamorph. Surrealist keys is the genre that we would call this. It is my love letter to surrealist film and film directors. We did a really fun deep dive on this on our Anamorph Muse video. It's on our YouTube channel. You should check it out, where we get a lot more into kind of the why behind the instrument and what we're trying to achieve. But at its core, we are trying to create an instrument that blurs the boundary lines between, real analog acoustic instruments and the digital world of, digital keys and synthesizers. We sampled, upright pianos, grand pianos, Wurlitzers, Rhodes, as well as some synthesizers like a DX7, a Juno, a Moog, a Casio toy keyboard, all sorts of things that you're really going to have fun with. But we wanted to take those two realities and completely blur the line between the two. We think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. We feel like a lot of you are asking for another synth instrument, kind of like what we did with the Gaspard trilogy. But we wanted to continue to make synth type instruments, but with a twist. We wanted to try to challenge ourselves to make an instrument that we've never played before. We wanted to create sounds that you have never heard before. And so that's kind of where this duality kind of comes in, is we wanted to create sounds that are completely unique to this instrument. And we had a lot of fun doing it. I hope that comes through in the sounds. Okay, and the last thing I want to say is this is a quote-unquote keys instrument. So what does that mean as opposed to leads or basses or something? That means that these are instruments with limited sustain for the most part, kind of like a piano or Wurlitzer, and a relatively fast attack. You can use the ADSR settings to change that and make these into something that is more akin to a pad or a lead or something else. And we'll go over that a little bit more later on in the video. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the interface. And just like all of our other libraries, these are encoded for the free Kontakt Player or Kontakt Full. They are going to appear in your library panel on the left side. Let's go ahead and load up this very first preset, Abandoned Lightforms. Some of this is going to look a little familiar to you. At the core of this instrument, we have these three dials: character, obscure, and shadow. On our synth instruments, we normally had two. This adds a third one, kind of like Vespertone. Character is going to add some tape saturation and compression as you turn that up. So let's give that a listen. Obscure, this is going to add some of your modulation effects like flanger, chorus, phaser, any of that stuff. Shadow is going to add either normally a delay or a reverb. On this one, it's adding a reverb. Let me pull up one other preset really quick just to show you a different kind of thing that might be attached to Shadow. Let's hear this preset called Backslider. This may sound a little bit familiar to you. So this one has like a reversed reverb on it. Let's go over to this LFO slider. This is actually a lot like movement would be on some of the Gaspard synths that we made. But an LFO, or a low frequency oscillator, it can do a lot of different things. It can mean a lot of different things. And so I'll show you just a couple examples real quick. This preset is called All Consuming Bliss, and you're going to hear a pitch LFO. pull up one other example to show you a different kind of LFO thing that might be happening. I'm going to pull up one that uses the built-in arpeggiator, which we'll talk more about here in a second. So on this one, the LFO is actually affecting the cutoff of the filter. There's also like a pitch LFO, and then there's a panning thing happening too that kind of works with the delay. So a lot of stuff being attached to this LFO. And then there are going to be other times where the LFO is doing something a lot more subtle. Let's pull up this one, Ballad of Otherworld, and let me show you what this one's doing. This one has a simple sine wave attached to the pitch. Okay, let's talk about the arpeggiator next. I'm going to go back to that one that I was just on, Ascending Gemini. And you turn the arpeggiator on and off by just hitting this button right here. And I'll be repeating this point a lot throughout the walkthrough. I would encourage you to try the arpeggiator on basically anything, any preset that's included here. You may end up messing with the ADSR dials a little bit, but anything can work really great with the arpeggiator. So we're back to this Ascending Gemini. And your sustain pedal will hold, it will not only affect the sustain, but it will also keep the arpeggiator going, so you don't have to keep your hands on the keys. Now I have it set to 4 octaves. You can change that to 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can affect all these different rates. It's set to 1/32. I just want to say that a lot of you, when you're going through these, you're going to have your DAW set to 120 BPM because that's just kind of the default. If some of the arpeggiators sound like crazy fast, maybe set your BPM to something that seems a little more in line with whatever genre of music you're doing. Just be mindful of that. Okay, so finally there's a different type of arpeggiator. There's all these different patterns that, that you can use. Let me show you the zigzag up option. This one's really interesting for like super tight voicings. You can also do this as played option. And I'm going to slow it down so you can kind of hear what's going on. So this is just going to put the notes in the order of how you play them. So you all will have a lot of fun with that. Let me just show you one other thing with this arpeggiator that's kind of interesting. Let's load up something that does not have an arpeggiator on it by default. That's Blue Light Piano. Turn the arpeggiator on. Let's switch to let's do 1/128. You can hear how you can make it into basically a pad that has a lot of movement to it, which is really interesting. Now let's hear this using the chord option. So that's just kind of another way that you can use the arpeggiator in a really non-traditional way. Let's hear this one, Gliding Light, because I want to show you, now would also be a good time to kind of step into talking about glide. So there are 3 different types of glide that you can do. One's a portamento, and then there's an up and down option, which I'll show you here in a second. But this is interesting because you can get some really interesting sounds if you use, you know, quote unquote chords like in a really sparse, spread out way. And then you can affect how much it's, or in the portamento, it's going to affect like how fast it's moving between notes. But you should really test the extremes of all of this. Try some super fast settings with a slow glide. You'll get some really interesting sounds that way. And again, any preset that's using arpeggiator, you can just as easily turn it off. And then you can, if you want to make it into a little bit more something that sounds like traditional keys, you may have to turn the decay up. Okay, to demonstrate the other 2 settings for glide, let me pull up a different preset here. I'm switching a lot because I think that sometimes in the past I accidentally left it on the same preset to go over most of the interface, and so it ends up being not as entertaining for you and you don't get to hear as much of the instrument. So here's one called Cosine. And this is using the up option. If you listen, you hear it kind of scoop into the note. You can also set that to down. As you move this, it's going to increase the amount of distance that it goes up or down from. And then the portamento will still work even without the arpeggiator. So that is glide. Okay, this mod slider is going to connect to your mod wheel, but you can disconnect it, which I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Let us load up. I want to show you it's going to control the filters by default. And so let's load up Barrier is Broken. So right now it's set to the low pass setting. You can switch it to the high pass setting. We set it to where visually it's going to match up with what you are hearing. So with this all the way down, when you have high pass on, it's not really cutting out much. And as you move it up, you'll hear it cut out more and more low end. And then let me show you a different example of that. We have one called Fits in the Mix that uses the high pass by default. Don't let that confuse you. And I noticed listening to some different pop songs that a lot of times you'll find some kind of hook with a synth that has, you know, everything below maybe 800 hertz just filtered out. And I think that people do that to leave room for like the drums and the bass to really punch. And so that's the idea behind some of these that use the high pass by default. You can also use this low pass, high pass, which basically, if you can picture the EQ spectrum and the highs and lows being cut off, it moves the center of this higher and lower. Let me just show you what that sounds like. Okay, and now I wanted to also mention, in case you didn't know, if you control click or right click on here, we made it so you can remove the mod wheel from this and attach it to the LFO instead, or you can leave them both connected, which is fun too. But that is how you do that. You can remove that and then attach this, control click, learn MIDI CC automation, then wiggle your mod wheel, and now it's attached to the LFO. But like I said, you can connect it to both. Okay, let's go to our new rendition of the Age knob. And I want to pull up this preset called Pianoed. This is something akin to a piano, but with a little bit of a twist. We've added these buttons where you can opt in or out of, wow, this is going to be like your pitch warble. Where this is going to make it sound kind of like a worn out cassette tape, and we actually used real cassette tape hiss to make this work. When you check mono, this is going to affect the stereo width. With it all the way up, it's going to be mono. I also want to mention that with none of these checked, it's still going to add a bit of tape saturation and affect the EQ. So this will do something even with none of them checked. So that's how it sounds on a piano. Let me pull up this Maxell high bias. I named this preset this name because it's based on the old cassette tapes that I used to buy and record songs from the radio, and it's supposed to emulate that old cassette sound. Let's hear the Age knob with some of these other ones checked too. So that is the Age knob. All right, got a couple more things to go over here. Let's hear this preset called Angsty. And I want to use this to kind of show you this sub-frequency mix. And this is basically, so even though this is a keys instrument in the sense that, you know, we're not playing, you can make pads with it, but by default, these are all not infinitely sustaining things. These are traditional keys, not leads, not basses. And so we made these basically mostly mix ready, where they're going to sit in a mix like they should without a ton of like crazy sub low end or anything. But we also thought you might want the ability to add that in. So that is what this knob is for. And I'll kind of showcase it on this one. So you can kind of hear it working there. If you're on your phone, you're not going to hear it, or if you're on a laptop, you probably won't hear it either. But like I said, you could make this one into a bass if you wanted to. If we are gonna, let's turn the sustain down, and let's filter. Let's take the reverb off. And let's turn this age knob stuff off too. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you could use these as a bass if you wanted to. You could even filter out more if you wanted to. Okay, I believe the only thing that we haven't talked about on the interface now is this sensitivity knob. This will come in handy on a preset like this. This one is called Anamorph, named after the instrument, or maybe the instrument's named after the sound. This was the very first idea that I had. And so when I'm talking about different sonic mirrors and realities kind of blurring, this is the most literal version of that. It kind of starts as one thing, and then as you increase the pressure on the keys, the sound changes into something more synthetic, more synthesizer based. And there's a few that operate in a very similar way. If you want to make it easier or harder to kind of transition between those realities, you can use sensitivity to do that. So that is how sensitivity works. Okay, now, maybe since we've kind of gone over the controls from the interface, maybe we should just hear as many sounds as we can with the time we have left. Okay, so that's going to do it for our walkthrough of Anamorph. We hope you have as much fun with this instrument as we had making it. Follow us on social media at Teletone Audio, or go to teletoneaudio.com to hear some demos and more videos on Anamorph. Thank you for watching.